you're the National Basketball Association, and you have watched, and I'm going to say it, I'm going to call out, I'm not calling out every NBA player. I'm not talking about anybody who's had legitimate injuries. I'm talking about the fact that we're living in a day and age where you see people sitting out games to prevent injuries. They're not injured. They're preventing themselves from getting injured by sitting out games.
The NBA's 65-game rule is more controversial than ever. Coaches don't like it, fans don't like it, and players most certainly don't like it. Was it even a good idea to implement in the first place? Today we're going to be going over the ins and outs of the NBA's 65-game rule, the good, the bad, and the downright ugly. And most importantly, is it even effective enough to keep at all? During the 2023 through 2024 season, Adam Silver and the NBA implemented a new rule. A rule that, especially today, has developed a lot of criticism and controversy. The 65-game rule. The 65-game rule is simple. If you wanted to be eligible for end-of-season rewards like the MVP, All-NBA teams, or Defensive Player of the Year, you have to play at least 65 games during the season, which is just around 80% of the 82-game season. If the player did not at least play 20 minutes throughout the game, then the game doesn't count towards the 65. And from the very day the rule was announced, it has always been a bit questionable, but it's never been this controversial until now. Because now more than ever, there have been a multitude of injuries towards star players, and those star players are getting closer and closer to being unavailable for the end of the season rewards, if not unavailable already. Giannis, Steph, and LeBron are all unavailable for end of the season awards, followed by injuries from Anthony Edwards and Luka Doncic, who also cannot be eligible for NBA end of the season awards. LeBron James had a streak of 21 straight seasons of being selected for an All-NBA team, the longest streak in NBA history, until that streak was broken because LeBron became ineligible for awards back in February. A handful of players like Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and Wemby are very close to being unavailable for awards due to missing too many games. Although there's not many games left in the season, this is still cause for concern because just one injury could have completely ruined an amazing season for any of these players. But the most eye-opening and sad example of this is the Cade Cunningham injury. On March 17th, Cade Cunningham suffered a collapsed lung injury and had to leave the game early against the Washington Wizards. Now this is a significant injury because Cade Cunningham was in the running for MVP this year, and definitely would have made an All-NBA team this year. And what's sad about this is that prior to this, Cade Cunningham had played 61 games and was well on track to hitting that 65 game mark. But now he will miss significant time and most likely not be eligible for end of the season awards unless the NBA does something about it. Luka Doncic needed one more game to be eligible for end of the season awards, but with his season-ending hamstring injury, he can now not win any of them. The bad part about this 65-game rule is that players who are well on target to reaching 65 games get punished for injuries that they cannot control whatsoever. In no way is this Cade's fault for being injured and stripped of any end of the season awards. Injuries are just part of the game, and it's definitely not fair what the league has done by penalizing players for things they cannot help. And not only this, but when you have a bunch of superstars ineligible for awards, the awards just ends up going to the next man up. But let's be honest, does the next man up really deserve it? The awards needs to be given to the player that actually deserves it, not just the person who happened to be more available. Or else, these end of the season awards become inaccurate. Another con to the 65-game rule is that it might actually lead to more injuries. Now I know that might sound a little crazy, but stick with me here. Obviously, the end of the season awards are valuable to the players, so there are definitely times where the players would rather play through injury in order to hit the 65 game mark. But if players are playing through injuries to try and reach 65, it actually risks getting injured further than if they had just sat the game out. And yes, we as fans want to see the superstars out on the court as much as possible. But being forced to play through injuries just to make sure you get to 65 games is bad for the players, and they're just putting themselves at risk. Now this might not always lead to more injuries, but the risk is definitely out there. Another thing worth pointing out is that the 65 game rule may affect players during the playoffs. Playing more games equals more fatigue on the body. More fatigue means the body is more at risk of injuries. Injuries in the playoffs is the last thing we want to see, and avoiding that should definitely be a priority. But with this rule, players are possibly more at risk of getting injured in the postseason, due to their body just simply breaking down. But as much as we can sit here bashing the NBA 65 game rule, there are some positives to it, and it may be more surprising than you think. We're going to take all the players that currently average over 25 points per game, since most if not all of those players are considered superstars. Those will be represented by the red bar. Now we're going to take the percentage of those games they've played this season and compare it to the percentage of games they've played in 2022-2023 season, which was the last season before the rule change. And we can see that player participation has gone significantly upwards since the rule change. The rule change was implemented to raise the amount of games that players participate in, and you cannot deny that the 65 game rule is doing its job. The rule is not 100% a bad thing, and in fact, we as fans benefit from it because we get to see our favorite players getting to play more instead of them load managing and sitting out games that they are capable of playing. There was nothing more annoying back a few years ago than watching a boring NBA game with no superstars on the floor because everyone was load managing. Load management has gone way down since the rule has been made, and Kawhi Leonard is a perfect example. We all know how Kawhi Leonard used to be the main culprit of load managing a few years ago. But with this rule change, we've seen a big spike in the amount of games he's played, especially this season. Some more positives that the 65 game rule brings is that with more superstars on the floor, viewership goes up and the NBA earns more money. Now this isn't really something that affects us as fans, but it's always good when the NBA gets a chance to grow. And financially, it's just one of the ways that the NBA grows. And a lot of that money is going towards the league's new expansion teams coming soon. So that's definitely something to think about. Now that we've gone over the pros and cons of the rule, now comes the big question: should it stay or not? And the short answer is yes, but it needs some major adjustments. To completely exclude players from winning end of the season awards because they got injured is just simply not right. And it takes away from all the hard work that they put in all season. This aspect of the rule definitely needs to be changed. Now let's say you get a ticket from the police, but you don't really agree with their decision. Well, you take that police officer to court. The same thing should happen with this 65 game rule. If a player doesn't reach 65 games, they should be able to go to the league and plead their case, just like they're doing with Cade Cunningham. A team being able to appeal the 65 game rule should definitely be a thing, because there have definitely been times where the rule has just not been right. The second adjustment that should be made to the rule is about the All-NBA teams. It should be that if you play 65 or more games, you can be eligible for the All-NBA teams, just as usual. But if you don't play 65 or more games, you can still qualify for the All-NBA second or third team. That way, it rewards players for actually staying healthy and reaching the 65 game mark. But it also doesn't 100% exclude players who get injured from still receiving the reward. It's not the highest level reward, but it's a reward nonetheless. And I have one final idea for how the NBA can lessen load management. But it doesn't have to do with the rule at all. And it's what a lot of people have been calling for anyways, which is to simply just shorten the season. Yes, I know, it's less basketball for us to watch. But in terms of player health, it makes so much more sense than implementing a 65 game rule. A shortened season makes more time available for players to rest and prioritize health, leading to less injuries, especially in the playoffs. Shortening the season by 10 games is not going to drastically change the NBA in any way, except for when it comes to breaking all-time records and stuff like that. But I think that's a sacrifice that needs to be made. But what are your thoughts on this rule? Is it good? Is it bad? And should it stay or not? Should it be adjusted or kept as is? At the end of the day, no matter how the NBA moves forward with this rule, it's doing its job, which is to limit load management, which is something that we all, as NBA fans, can celebrate.